Well, that just happened. Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Just a little warning, this will probably be one of the vaguest reviews I ever do. So I just saw Men. I just watched Men. Wow, there's really no way to say that without it sounding a little bit sus. So the film Men is a new horror drama from director Alex Garland. He's the director of Ex Machina as well as Annihilation, two movies that I am very interested in but have never actually seen. And I'm going to be honest with you, over my time reviewing movies, I've had a very love-hate relationship with A24 Productions.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
On one hand, they are one of the only production companies who consistently put out original ideas, and I appreciate them for that. But on the other hand, I find a lot of their films to be a bit too pretentious and too weird for me. Now, there's a little of both going on in Men, but as always, I'm going to start with some positives because there is a lot to appreciate about this movie. First and foremost, this is a beautifully shot film. And it offers some very interesting and thought-provoking visuals that will probably stick with you long after watching it.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
What it also does really well is build tension, especially in the early stages of the film. Going into this film and not knowing anything about it, like I did, is probably the way you're going to have the best experience. Because I found myself consistently on the edge of my seat because I had no idea what the fuck was going on. This movie is also a slow burn, for sure. But you can't really help but be affected by its creepy atmosphere and slow pacing. Both of those things kind of methodically pull you into the film.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
And even though it uses familiar themes from horror movies like isolation or that fear that comes with being in a place that you are unfamiliar with, it still feels like Alex Garland was trying to put a fresh spin on those things, and he pretty much succeeded in that. A large portion of the film has to deal with the main character dealing with a great deal of trauma.
I'm feeling woozy here.
She recently experienced a tragedy that involved her husband, and she goes to the countryside and rents a house to try to escape that, or at least to heal from it. The main character of Harper is played by Jessie Buckley, and honestly, she puts on a great performance here. Everything she does is very nuanced, and you are completely wrapped up in her situation. And the general idea, without getting into spoilers of course, the best that I can,
you have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
Is that she's experiencing a great amount of guilt for what happened, and the whole situation with her husband is kind of haunting her and holding her back from moving on in life. While at this home where she goes to heal, and in the surrounding woods and in a nearby village, Harper becomes increasingly uneasy and feels like something or someone is stalking her.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
There's a very clear message being delivered throughout the course of the film as it pertains to how society sometimes views men. But it's told through her eyes, so in a weird sort of way you understand why she would feel that way. Initially, I wanted to say that this message comes off very heavy-handed, and I think it still does through some of the dialogue. I do think there may have been a more digestible way to deliver this message, but it is the direction that the director and writer chose, so it's either going to work for some people and not work for others.
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
If I'm being honest, I'd have to say not everything landed for me personally. And this is where the movie started to go off the rails for me, because the toxic male narrative that they're trying to spin here, it just comes off as too overt and ridiculous based on how they're trying to deliver it to you. It's typical 2022 shit.
Why do these things always happen to me?
But that's when we move into the final act of the film. But this to me is where it went full A24, and it lost me a little bit in the third act. I'm going to make this very clear. This film has a lot to say. It's very metaphorical, it's very allegorical. But the final act of this film falls under the too pretentious and too weird category that I previously mentioned, at least for me. So much so that it took me out of the movie for the last 30 minutes or so, and again, I was enjoying it up until that point. it. And it's not just that it's a twist that doesn't really work. It's one of these batshit crazy mindfuck endings that just doesn't really land for me. It feels like this ending was taken from another movie and just plopped into this one. It's very jarring.
Why?
I mean, it is pretty grotesque also, which is kind of cool, but by the end of it, I was just feeling a bit underwhelmed by the finale. And you can't help but think that 2022 ideologies are once again rearing their ugly head in the way that this film turns out. It felt like it was really building to something with the tension and atmosphere it established earlier in the film, and then kind of just dissolved into pure shock value.
That makes sense.
This movie honestly reminded me of my experience with Midsommar, because I thought the exact same thing to myself. Yes, it's a competently made movie from a pure filmmaking perspective. Basically, it's nice to look at. But it feels like they needed to reel it in at some points to just keep it from going overboard and being a bit too weird. And this movie didn't do that, and that's unfortunate. Because of this finale, it's going to be very difficult for me to want to watch this movie again knowing where it ends up.
I don't give a fuck.
Maybe if I did watch it again, I would get something more out of it and the ending wouldn't seem so out of left field. But as of right now, I was just a bit too disappointed in that finale, so that's why I'm going to have to give it the Careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care! Y'all be cool. Right on.